1, 2, 3. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to Podditea.
My name is Janice.
And my name is Alana.
And this is our podcast.
You want to do the overview and I'll do the
Sure.
this episode?
Alana and I are best friends, having known each other for 10 plus years. And we're currently half a country away from each other. And this podcast is meant... Going our separate ways, as Alana pointed out. And this podcast is meant to discuss what life is like after undergrad, basically.
Mm-hmm. So, a couple scheduling things before I talk about this specific podcast. So first of all, the one that's going to be uploaded this week is about 3 weeks old. Yep. And by the time this is uploaded, this podcast will be about 2 weeks old. So we're doing these every 2 weeks, but it takes about 2 weeks to process them because I don't have a ton of time to edit and stuff. So it'll be a little outdated each time. So if anything drastic happens in the intervening 2 weeks and we don't talk about it, that's why. Mm-hmm. Yeah, also I'm editing the previous podcast right now, and Janice's audio sounds way better than mine. It's because she's got actually good audio equipment, and I have my crappy little recorder. So I decided today, if we keep doing this and we actually make it till Christmas or something, I might invest in some better audio equipment because
this one was expensive.
But you already had it, right? So
my mother had it, so yeah. I didn't have to pay.
Well, I'll just look into it. I feel like it's because when I'm editing, it's like a pain in the butt. I have to do digital noise reduction and stuff. Okay, so I thought that we would do kind of a themed pod this time, and we could talk about jobs, which is kind of the worst possible topic to talk about in some situations, but I think it's a really relevant one in our case.
Especially in our case. So Alana is currently in grad school, for those who don't know. Meanwhile, I'm taking this year off to work.
And by off, you mean not really off at all,
I mean off school.
Very much on.
Yeah. It's off school, but this is my first year not being in school. So I'm trying out a lot of different things, which includes work, exploring new fields. And so the work topic is very much relevant to my life right now. Okay, so we can talk about specifically what we're doing, but before we do that, we keep forgetting to do this segment, but it's the most important segment, which is talking about our tea parties. Oh, right. So, Janice and I kind of jumped the gun a little bit on this episode because we totally forgot until about 2 seconds before we started recording that the whole premise of this podcast was to actually have tea parties, which involves, having tea. So we kind of whipped up, each of us whipped up a cup of tea, in the last couple minutes. So do you want to talk about yours? And I'll talk about mine. So I got a lemon and ginger tea from Twinings, partially because I've had a lot of caffeine already today. And secondly, because my throat's a little bit sore. The weather has been changing a lot where I am, so it might be due to that. I don't know. I just don't want to be sick. So, prevention.
Yeah. So I also have an herbal tea, just by virtue of the fact that it was the only tea I could find that was in a tea bag already, and I didn't have to, put it into my tea strainer, which seemed like a lot of extra effort. So I'll post pictures on the Instagram and stuff, but what I have is a Stash chocolate orange tea, which sounds really gross and is one of my very favorite teas of all time.
Wait, a what? So chocolate tea?
Oh, so the brand name is Stash.
Oh, okay.
So when I post the picture on the Instagram, you'll see I showed a picture of the wrapper and also my tea mug. And I'm going to talk about the mug super quickly. This was given to me by beta listener number 1. Well, I guess that's still the code name that we're using.
I guess. She hasn't listened to our podcast, I'm pretty sure, though.
Or he.
I'm not sure if I know who each person is now, guys.
You're right about who it is.
Oh, okay.
So she gave me this mug. It says "Everyone Deserves Tea," and it's from the Lizzie Bennett Diaries merchandise store.
Nice.
So yeah, shout out to beta listener number 1, even though she still hasn't listened to our podcast. All right, so on to the first segment. So,
yes.
Again, we've got the Google Doc open in front of us.
So, as I mentioned, I'm currently looking for another job. I have one job already, like I said. It's very casual hours, though. So, 1 week, they could be needing me a lot. Another week, they might barely need me. It's very much dependent on the research process, as I work as a lab manager at the local university. I like it because I get to utilize my psych skills I studied psych in undergrad. And I get to learn a lot more about psych too. However, it's always nice to have something set, as I found for myself. So, yeah, looking for a second part-time job. And so this past week, I've spent interviewing, specifically for 2 jobs in different fields. One's in research, and one's in marketing. Research is my background. With marketing, however, that's a newer interest. So I'm just seeing what I can do with that. And yeah, basically, what I've realized, it's interesting because a lot of people hate the job search. But for me, I actually kind of love it. I love the part when I'm looking through job boards and seeing what positions are out there and trying to fit my resume and cover letter to suit the job. And something I recently learned through the digital marketing program I just recently completed was also how resume formatting, especially when you're going into marketing or design, it plays such a huge role. Now they want color, they want personality, they want visuals. Sorry, this is just basically me rambling about jobs at this point. I had the first job interview ever where there was actually a practical component. So,
what did you do?
Okay, so with most jobs interviews that I've experienced, at least, you go in, you sit down, they ask you questions pertaining to your experience, and basically they're using that to suss out whether you're someone they want to hire or someone they want to learn more about. With the practical component, though, I think this is more typical for more technical jobs. So they were testing my abilities with Microsoft Excel, how I write professionally if I'm monitoring an email account, for example. And it was really interesting. It was timed. There were 3 tasks. One of the tasks I'd never done before, actually. So, but we had the internet there. We had the internet there. And basically, I had to use the internet for a different task. So I just quickly Googled what it was and completed the task. It wasn't a difficult one. I just didn't necessarily know what to do since I'd never had to do it before. And I realized...
Were they just sitting over your shoulder while you were doing stuff like
no,
this?
They weren't. They weren't. They were in another room. So then basically I saved my work and then they look at it. And I did tell them I didn't know how to do the one, but I quickly looked it up. And they were still impressed by the fact, actually, that I completed all 3 tasks within the time limit.
Okay.
So, I mean,
That's really interesting, because I feel like a lot of jobs require proficiency in Excel, and I feel like it's almost becoming like a joke at this point where people always say that they're proficient in Excel.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I'm realizing... You never actually have to prove it.
I'm realizing that too. Like, with Excel, I'm like, okay, I know how to do this and that, but there's actually still so much out there that I could learn. I have friends in engineering and coding who know a lot more than I do, that's for sure.
I have to say, I hated Excel until I learned how to use it. I thought that the idea of just having huge blocks of numbers was just completely aberrant to my brain. But then when I learned how to use Excel, it's honestly my favorite thing to in terms of a computer program. It's so fun to be able to use proficiently. So if you don't know how to do it, learn it just for fun. Do people do that kind of thing for fun? I do. I don't know.
No, I think I want to learn more, definitely. I want to learn, I learned how to do phi lookups and h lookups, and I've recently learned how to create pivot tables. So that was really cool. Being
able to just take a whole bunch of numbers and turn them into something understandable doesn't require a whole bunch of coding knowledge. It just...
Yeah, that's
Sorry, this is just this podcast has devolved into talking about Excel, which is probably super boring for most people.
Whoops. But anyway, there was this practical component, which was different and new, but it's really cool because part of the thing is too, while the interview process can be long, what I'm getting from these interviews, even if I don't get hired, I'm learning about stuff that these positions are looking for. I'm learning about areas I might want to learn more about and explore more. Second, job interviews are also a time to not just see if you fit the company, but if they fit you. It's a good time to ask questions and learn about expectations. You can talk about salary expectations, possibly. Usually you want them to be the ones to bring it up, though, especially if it's the first interview. So those are really cool benefits with job interviews, and it's just practice, because oftentimes you will get the same types of questions or variations of questions, and while they will be tailored to the job, it helps you with your next interviews, be it with that company or for a different position elsewhere. So,
can I interject with an analogy? Because
yes.
Whenever people say things, I'm like, hey, can I make up an analogy for this? Which is what I do constantly in this podcast.
No, I do that too. And then people laugh.
So here's my analogy for job interviews and whether or not they suck. So it's like when you're going to the mall to go shopping, or when you're going to the mall because you need an outfit for tomorrow, right? So if you're going to the mall to go shopping and there's no stakes, then it's fun. Unless you're me and you're being dragged to the mall by certain people.
Hi.
But if you're just going and you're like, let's try on some clothes, and like, I don't really care, then it's fun. But when you're going because you're panicked about getting the outfit that you need tomorrow, and all of the clothes suck and none of them are the right size and things like that, then it is the worst, right?
I guess.
So there's not really much to learn from that, I think, except that if you think about it in terms of a scenario that has two possible outcomes depending on your attitude towards it, then it kind of gives you more control about how you go about approaching the problem. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, can I give some more tips with interviews too along those lines?
Oh, sure.
So you can control your attitude. Like, you can try your best to stay calm. Part of how you can do that is making sure you prepare beforehand. Research the company. Go past not just what they're about, but if they have a blog, maybe read the last few articles. See what kind of stuff they talk about, what area they're possibly heading into. You can usually Google questions online, interview questions, even specifically for your role, if not for that specific company. And also, with how you dress, if they don't tell you what the dress code is for the culture at that company, you can always ask, especially when you're arranging that interview. You usually want to try and be a step up beyond what they would usually wear. Also, you usually have the chance to help pick what time slot you get for the interview. And if so, you know yourself best. Like, are you most awake after lunch, before lunch? And try to make sure you've prepared before that. Like, if you need your coffee, make sure you've had your coffee. I know this is such typical advice, but it's really real, and it makes a big difference. The end.
Okay. Yeah. So, I have only ever had one job interview for all of the jobs that I have had.
That frustrates me.
And because it's a little weird when you're doing the sort of thing that I do. So my first job was, and we'll get into this in a future section that I want to talk about in the podcast, but my first job was working at a cooking school, which I did for 3 summers. Mm-hmm. And basically they had a need, and I had experience, and I filled that need, and then they basically just gave me a trial run on the spot, which was completely serendipitous and something that I did not expect, and it was just really convenient, and I can't really give any advice to that effect because it's just luck.
I will say my first real job happened like that too, though there was an interview. She knew me already, the boss, so that helped a lot. If you can, networking is actually really helpful too, just saying. Janice froze up more tips. Yay! That our listeners probably already know. Networking
is like the terrifying word for people like me. It's like, don't make me talk to people.
I don't like networking either. I don't like it, especially when it's not organic. Like, when you're just, like, making conversation to make conversation. But it's never bad to, like, try and meet people in the same... I don't know if that makes sense.
We talked about this at length in the previous podcast, so we won't get into it too much. Anyway, so the rest of my jobs have been research jobs, and especially in chemistry, when you're doing research, I mean, like, so in psychology research, you have to, like, you know, be professional and stuff. In chemistry research, you have to wear jeans. Like, you have to. You're in a lab and you're spilling stuff on yourself. So it's like, what do I wear to a job interview if they're going to ask me to go into a lab?
I would still wear, like, nice pants. Like, non-jeans.
I have one, okay, let me tell you a secret. It's not really a secret. I have one pair of khakis. Like, khaki pants that aren't jeans. And I have worn them the first day of each of my jobs and never since. Nice. Because once I find out that everyone else is wearing jeans, I just switch back to jeans.
Yep. No, like, I have certain outfits for business casual that I've curated over the years. As if someone was to ask Alana or beta listener number 1 what my style was, I don't know about you, Alana, but I know beta listener number 1 would definitely say I'm more dressed up. And that's partially due
to... just, like, every day? Or during, like, when you're working?
Every day.
I don't know. I feel like you have a better grasp on what style means than I do, because I just wear whatever will, like, fit the weather that day, and I don't really think about how nice or otherwise it looks.
Okay, let's put it like this. I've been curating a closet full of clothes that would work in a work environment.
Can I tangent for a second?
Yes.
Have you ever watched the YouTube channel / series called The Financial Diet?
I've heard of it. I think I've watched a little bit about it. I think I've watched like a little bit of one.
You're super reminding me of one of the people from The Financial Diet right now.
In a good way or a bad way?
In, like, a neutral way. I mean, not in a bad way, for sure. Just, like, the way that you talk about things, like, you know what you're talking about. That's just how it just kind of reminds me of that.
Let's just say, basically, to sum it up short, be it for purposes of Alana cutting down the podcast, or for listeners wanting a key quote or piece, I'm the person who friends ask me to take them shopping as they start looking for their work wardrobes.
Mm-hmm. That's probably true. And it's a good thing that you said that, because I probably am going to have to trim a bunch of this because we're at almost half an hour.
Yeah.
So, do you want to talk about... I guess you've talked about your job a little bit.
Yeah, how about you talk about, like, your stuff?
Okay, so I am in grad school, and turns out that means that you're doing several full-time jobs at once. Maybe not several full-time jobs. Basically, one full-time job and a couple part-time jobs that are all fit into the schedule of a slightly longer than average full-time job.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so as well as doing research, which is like the full-time job, which is pretty much anytime I'm not doing any of the other things, I'm in my lab doing research. But the other things that I do include TAing, which is really fun, actually, and I'll talk about it a little bit in a later segment. In addition to all that stuff, I'm also taking a class, which is, luckily for me, I only have to take one class this semester and one class next semester, and that's all of my class requirements. But I keep on, like, forgetting that's a thing that I do until it's, like, Sunday night, and it's like, oh, I have homework. And then, since this is, like, my first year, and my first year is the least research heavy, like, I need to top load the rest of the stuff that I'm doing, so I'm also doing a whole bunch of, like, volunteering. So one of the things that I volunteered to do was this outreach thing that involves going to elementary school classrooms around the Halifax area and doing, like, a chemistry magic show, which sounds like a lot of fun because little kids are excitable about science.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I feel like it's very busy. There's never a time when I'm not doing anything, but it's like, it's actually kind of living the dream, to be honest. Like, it's definitely work, but it's the only kind of work that I really want to do. So when you find yourself in that position, that's, I think, a good indicator that you're on the right track. I don't know.
That's good, though. No, if you're happy with your job, that's really good. And I will say, if you're happy with what you do, or if you're really happy with the team you're working with, then that's what matters. Like, the people matters, the environment you're in. If you have to love something about it, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's better if you like more things than you hate.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. That's pretty much all I had to say about that.
So Alana and I are going to talk a little bit about our past experiences with work and jobs, stuff we've liked and disliked. As I mentioned,
and how we carried. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Alana. No, continue.
And I was going to just add to that and how we would carry those past experiences onto our future endeavors and what we'd look for in future jobs and careers and stuff.
Something I've noticed, for me personally at least, with various work and projects is that the people make a big difference. Whether the team's a really good one and they're friendly people, whether they do their work or not, whether you can get along with them, that plays a huge role. And part of that again is finding out the culture. So actually, for the one marketing position I recently interviewed for, they had an open house type of an event the day before my in-person interview. And I ended up going to it, so I got a little bit of a tour. I got to meet some of the current employees. And that was really nice, just hearing what kind of things they experienced there, letting me get to know the workplace before my interview as well. It also looks good if you mention it in the interview that you've done some of this research beforehand. So that's awesome. But the people make a big difference for me. I've also realized I've had a lot of jobs where the hours are very casual, they're not defined. And that's worked well as a student because it means usually the bosses are pretty flexible. If you have a week of midterms, for instance. As someone now, though, who doesn't necessarily have that, like I said, I wouldn't mind having a job with set hours, just so it's easier to plan around your day. That's the thing. So that's kind of something I'm carrying forward.
Can I tell the listeners one thing about you?
Sure.
If Janice doesn't have enough structure, she really starts to freak out. So having set hours is probably a really good thing for Janice.
Basically, I don't like doing nothing. I like to have a plan set. I use checklists to get stuff done throughout the day. So I know, okay, I have this to do. Let's make sure it happens. So yeah, the structure thing. I just need some semblance of structure.
Yeah, okay, I can talk about a past experience thing. So sometimes it's scary to talk to your supervisor directly about doing things, especially if you want to seem more proficient than you feel like you actually are.
Truth.
Which happens to me all the time, because I'm like, if I ask this question, then he's going to think I'm stupid or something like that. So what I've learned to do recently is really take advantage of the other people who've been working there longer than you have, because at least they were at some point in the same boat as you. And for me, it's really, I mean, we've already talked about this in the previous podcast, but it's kind of the worst to ask people for help and talk to people and stuff. But on the other hand, it kind of fosters a feeling of community/empathy, because not even if it's a good work environment, and most of mine have been really great, but if you can kind of acknowledge that this part of the job is good and this part of the job is less good, and you find that common ground with people around you, then first of all they can help you a lot in terms of navigating how to do that, and second of all it brings you kind of closer to them, which is nice.
Definitely.
Especially this is specific to what I'm doing right now. In the research part, what I do is kind of directed by my supervisor, but how I do it is very much up to me. And so navigating a new lab, you really need to ask people for help. And so and consider the fact that if you were in that situation where somebody else was asking you for help, you'd probably be glad to do it.
No, actually, and that makes sense to me, the whole asking people and it brings them closer. I've had an experience where I came onto a team and I knew it was a leadership role, but I ended up taking more leadership, I think, than was expected by either the boss, by me, or by my peers. And it worked. I don't think I got resentment for any of that. Even though they had been there longer, it's partially just a personality thing with that as well. But I think doesn't hurt that I did recognize their seniority. The fact that they had been working there for longer. If I had questions, I asked them, and they were very happy to answer and stuff. So.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. If you're like, hey, it's obvious that you know more than me, then they might be like, oh, thanks for acknowledging that. I don't know.
Yeah. Like, it's like if you're coming in new and you end up in a leadership position, something I've been told is to, well, this was in a context, they said if you're going to be there for a few years, so like the first year, just listen, observe, take in what's happening, take in the culture. Don't just come in and try to change it, because if something's working already, right, then you can improve upon it. You don't necessarily need to overhaul it. And then I was saying... Sorry, go.
Sorry, go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say that people are comfortable in the culture they've established in their workplace, so they don't want like a newbie to come in and mess it up.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you take that time to listen and observe as well, it also helps the others build trust in you. And then they can see, you're not just here to change things necessarily. You want to learn from them, with them, work with them. It helps build up the trust, as you were mentioning.
Okay. So there's that segment. I thought that was pretty good. We can probably keep that. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next segment that we wanted to do was something that I just came up with a little bit ago. So when we post this, it should be around the time of Thanksgiving. And this is, the Canadian Thanksgiving, which is different for most people around the world, I think. But for us, it's in October.
Canada.
We haven't had Janice singing yet this podcast. So
I know, right?
I'm glad we did that. When we post this, it'll be around the time of Thanksgiving. It might actually be on Thanksgiving Day because it's 2 weeks from today or from tomorrow when we post the previous one. So what I thought we might do on theme is kind of an extension of the previous thing we talked about, which is giving thanks to our past experiences and people who have serendipitously helped us in the challenges that we're tackling right now. Okay, so I'm gonna do mine, and then if you get it and it's like, oh, I have something that I can say about that, then you can do yours too. And if not, it'll just be me talking.
Okay.
Okay, so first I would like to give thanks for my 3 summers experience teaching little children how to cook. Because shockingly enough, this is almost directly applicable to my experience TAing second-year undergrads in organic chemistry. Little kids come up to you and ask you how to boil the solvent. It's very similar. So thank you for that experience and learning the demeanor that is required to explain things in a way that people with less experience than you can understand.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? That's a good kind of Thanksgiving nugget?
That makes sense.
Do you want to do...
Should I go?
Another one? Yeah, you can do one, and then I have another one, but you can do one.
Sure. I give thanks for a job, my longest job, my first job. There were challenging moments, but I'm very grateful for it because I learned a lot, and I had a very understanding boss who gave me the freedom to explore and to try new things, such as I got to try out new marketing things. I got to write a social media proposal, and that's stuff I can put on my resume. That's stuff that helps demonstrate my initiative. She was very supportive, basically, in letting me try new things with the organization, and I honestly wouldn't be where I am without her. Like, she's just provided me a lot of support through references in my career. So I'm very grateful for her and for that job and the support she's giving me in exploring what I can get and do in life.
Okay, good. Can I do another one? I've got 2 more, actually.
I don't know if I'll have more. So, I'm just going to say that.
That's okay. Both of mine are about supervisors that I've had in the past. I'm going to say them in chronological order. So I'd like to give thanks for my supervisor during my first ever research project in the summer after third year, he was so enthusiastic about ideas that I had, even if they were stupid ideas. He thought that they were so cool, and it seemed so genuine that he was just like excited about the fact that I wanted to contribute, and really like gave me positive feedback at like almost anything that I did, and just seemed to like really care about me, which was like super nice. And I constantly feel undeserving, but yeah, I will always be thankful for that. Mm-hmm. That wasn't very unique. How can I say an anecdote about that makes it more entertaining to listen to? I feel like this podcast has been more informative than actually entertaining, so we have to like have some silly bits to.
I was going to say this is pretty serious, actually, as far as our podcasts go. I have one too, actually, now though.
Okay, good.
Something I'm grateful for is my research experience, and I know that's such a broad thing. Like, I've worked as a research assistant for several years before becoming the lab manager I am now. I've had lots of research projects through my undergrad, which included my thesis, as well as a large project involving surveying, creating a survey, data analysis. Alana heard all about this project.
Oh, yeah?
Yep. And I've been an editor for a psych journal. But I'll say I'm very grateful for it because I've gotten a huge range of exposure to research and the different types of research. I've done quantitative, I've done qualitative. I've gotten to work with the city and see how it can be used in a commercial setting. And because of this experience, especially my thesis experience, I think I've gotten a good understanding of what it might be like if I was to continue in research. And it's helped me fine-tune the direction I think I'm wanting to take now. So I'm very grateful for that. All the hands-on experience I've gotten.
Yeah, hands-on experience is so good. Mm-hmm. That sounded really lame, but it's true.
No, it's so true though. Like, honestly, like, you can learn about stuff all you want in class, but it's actually going out and applying that and trying your hand at it that helps you figure out whether this is something you could see yourself doing the rest of your life, possibly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I have one more.
Yes.
So my last one is that I'm so thankful for whatever insane luck allowed me to learn how to do organic chemistry in the summer before coming to start my master's degree, because that's what I'm doing right now in the lab. And if I had not had that experience, I would not have even started my first reaction yet, because I would have been spending all this time learning how to do things. But my supervisor during the summer was so patient and so willing to teach me things like that, and every single day I'm like, thank goodness that I had someone showing me how to do these things, so now I can do them myself. And that's all I want to say about that.
That was really good.
Well, thank you.
So, given that this podcast has been filled with information about job interviews and work life, Alana and I had the wonderful idea of providing Alana with more interview experience, given how she's only done one before. Yes. However, that would make this podcast very long, and we try to be considerate of our listeners. So, Listen in next week to hear that podcast with when we interview Alana and talk about job experiences. Yay!
Yeah. So that's going to be Podditea 003.5. So it's like a bonus little episode, and it's not going to be little. We already recorded it, and it's going to take a while, but it's going to be good. It's going to be fun, and you may learn something, and you may find out that I'm useless.
Alana's not useless. However, you might find out whether we're going to be needing a new co-host. That's
true, yeah, because if I fail this interview, then Janice is going to find a different co-host. So
now, anyways,
have that to look forward
to make sure you're alerted when that podcast comes out, follow our social media. You can follow us on Tumblr, on Instagram, on Twitter, or Facebook. Just find us under Podditea.
Not to say that our social media person has been slacking a little bit.
Wow.
This is just to say that we're going to be posting more stuff on the social media, hopefully soon. So, subscribe, /follow,
/like,
all of those,
/love us,
/like. Yeah. Another thing you can do is send in questions thoughts that you had during during listening to the podcast, or thoughts that you have not listening to the podcast that you just want us to know. We like to hear from our listeners, and I know that we're just growing right now, so we might not have a ton of listeners, but to everyone who's listened this far, thank you so much.
We love you.
And yeah, I think we do.
Possibly.
And that's all I've got for today.
Dum dum dum!
Okay, bye. We should start a Patreon, and then we'll have like a special Patreon-only episode of us being stupid.
That sounds good.
Because at least we're being paid for it, right?
Truth.